I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 136. This one's with Amos Kennedy Jr., and we talk about his path to Letterpress. Mr. Kennedy was an unbelievably fantastic interview, and I appreciate him taking the time. If you'd like to find out more about him, the best way is to follow his Instagram. It's Kennedy Prince, KENNEDYPRINTS. But yeah, this was a banner episode for me, and I appreciate Mr. Kennedy for being on. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode.
If there's anything you want me to cut out later, like if you start making fun of somebody and want to cut it out later, I can totally do that.
Well, if I just start dissing somebody, I don't want that cut out.
I'll clip those out and put them out as the teasers for this. It's like, here comes the hot takes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. And we'll go ahead and get going. So where are you originally from?
That's a good question. My family was travelers for a long time, but I claim Louisiana. I was born in Louisiana, and most of my childhood was spent in Louisiana.
Okay. And I can't imagine, as I wear shorts in the wintertime and I can't take the heat. So I can't imagine. I already have to deal with East Tennessee in the summertime. So I can't imagine.
Okay.
Louisiana.
Well, it's not that far from Louisiana. It's only, I mean, probably not 100 miles south of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all that, the humidity is a little bit more, but.
Well, North Louisiana doesn't have as much humidity, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was 60 miles from the Arkansas border.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, way up north in Grambling.
And what did your folks do for a living?
My father was a professor, and my mother was under my tutelage for about 12 years, and I brought her up and trained her, and she went on to become a professor too.
Okay. So when you were young, education was a huge thing in your household.
Yes, it was.
Okay. And so were you into art as a kid?
No,
not at all.
not at all.
Not at all.
No,
So
I was not the child that was called on to do the drawings in class.
okay. So what was your track that you were kind of on as a kid? Was there anything that interested you that you wanted to get into as an adult?
Not really.
Not really.
I was just, as a child and as an adult, I just kind of go through life completely oblivious to what's going on.
Okay. There's the first pull quote of the episode. So do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have 3 brothers and 1 sister. Well, 1 brother passed last year.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry
but
to
there
hear
were
that.
5 of us all together.
And did you all, was it kind of a household where it was like, get out in the morning and come back when the lights come on, when the street lights come on? Were you all
Uh,
out and about a lot?
Not. I mean, we were outside a lot, but not out and about. But we
Okay.
got around. We got around a little bit. Basically, it was school. Then you came home from school. It was homework, and then it was time to go to bed.
Oh, okay.
In the summertime, we got out more. But that's typical.
Okay. And I'm trying to think, like, not being into, was there any exposure to any art or anything outside of just school when you were a kid?
There was exposure to performing arts and
Okay.
music, visual arts. I mean, we had visual arts in high school,
Okay.
but and at that time, believe it or not, once upon a time, this country valued art education,
Yeah.
and so the state of Louisiana, before athletics became the only thing that you're supposed to do in high school, had academic and art contests statewide. So you
Okay.
become the state champion, or you won the state prize for the best, painting from a high school in Louisiana.
Okay.
And so my high school did have art classes. I just didn't take any.
Okay.
Again, because I grew up in a time where it was, you had to be talented almost, show some talent. It wasn't everybody gets to do art and then don't
Right.
worry about what it looks like. Just enjoy the process.
Okay. And I'm curious, like, so the high school I went to had a strong vocational program. Like, even my dad and uncles and mom all went to that same high school. So it was a strong vocational program from when they were in school to when I was in school. And I go back and talk to kids now, and I'm like, it's hard to imagine, but when I started high school in 1992, there were only 2 computers in the entire school. And like now everybody's walking around with a computer in their pocket,
Right.
and it's so wild. And so I got into printing the offset lithography way, where we would
Right.
design the computer, shoot film, strip
Yep.
up plates, like all that stuff. My instructor, Mr. Miracle, had been a printer in the Army for a long
Right.
time.
Well, see, that's the thing. People went to the Army and they learned a skill.
Right.
Then they could come out of the Army and get a job.
Right.
Now, all the printing's done by a contractor that, nowhere close to a base.
Yeah. So in your schooling, were there any trades or anything to get kids into?
We had industrial arts. That was primarily a 9th grade class that all 9th grade boys had to take, and 9th grade girls took home ec.
Okay.
And then I guess you could have taken it in as a sophomore, junior, or senior, but I don't know many people who took it. It was like, okay, that's that 9th grade elective that I'm taking.
Okay.
And then after that, it was all academics, and there was music and band,
Yeah,
and theater, and but visual arts. Like I said, there was an art class, and that art class was for the whole school. Not the art program was for the whole school, so they drew students from 9th grade through 12th grade.
okay.
And then the outstanding students were the ones who went on to compete in the contest that the state educational system offered.
Okay. And you so when you got done with high school, did you go on to college or?
Yes, I did.
And,
It was either college or Vietnam, and I thought
okay.
college was a little bit better.
Yeah. So my dad was born in 50, his brother in 48, and his younger brother in 51. And his two brothers fought in some pretty hairy stuff in Vietnam.
Right.
And my grandmother, when it came time for my dad to go, was like, "You're not taking all 3 of my boys." And she fought hard to get him. He was still in the Army, but he served in Korea as a chaplain's assistant.
Okay.
Because the 2 other brothers were in the horror stories I have heard since then. Thank God. Yeah, they made it out alive. But
and they were young. They weren't old. They were,
No.
they weren't like that's one of the things that people don't realize about the Vietnam War as opposed to World War II. World War II, you had a bunch of old men.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Vietnam War, most of them were under the age of 20.
Yeah. They were they were kids.
Right.
So you go off to college. Where did you go to college?
I went to Grambling. It was
Okay.
Grambling College. Now it's Grambling State University.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have heard. I've watched. Hate to go back to athletics. I've watched football games.
Yeah.
What did you study when you were
I
there?
studied mathematics.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm trying to think what. So was mathematics a way to get into engineering or teaching? What?
No, I was going to go into economics.
Economics. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I went to a very poor school, so a lot of my math is only at a certain level.
Well, I think you and I have that in common. Grambling was traditionally a school for and I think still is a school for first generation students.
Yeah.
You know, so the first one to go to college out of their family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, so I was going to, the economics department wasn't that strong at Grambling. So it was suggested that I take mathematics and then study economics on the graduate level because it becomes more math at the graduate level.
Okay.
But while I was at Grambling, I did visit the print shop there because we had a printer that did the programs, the forms, and all those sort of things for the school. And they had an offset press. And that printer actually was my neighbor.
Oh.
Got his degree from Southern University in Louisiana because up until about maybe the late 50s, a lot of historically Black colleges had printing programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was for lack of a better term, it was a trade.
Yeah.
A lot of the historically Black colleges started both in academics and trades. So people learned to print because there was a need for printers in the Black community.
Okay. And so you found the print shop. Did it click with you immediately?
No, it didn't. It was just something to do. I passed by it. The door was open, I think. And I went in and I spoke to Mr. Blake and he said, that's what he did. And he said, come back and I'll show you what I do. And at that time it was all offset. And so, it was plates and dark rooms. And then they had this one little machine that would do typesetting, but it was almost like a rotary telephone. You roll it around to one character, you hit it, then you roll it to the next and you hit it. Yeah.
Is that Letterpress?
I don't remember because I only did this for a couple of weeks and then I got bored. I wasn't a work study student.
Okay.
I was just, passing by.
Just checking it out.
Right.
Okay. And so you stuck with the did you go on to
No, I didn't. I went on and I became a computer programmer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this would have been time IBM was the big one?
That was when IBM was the big one, Control Data and Tandem, and then DEC was the big boys for mini computers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is when computers were the size of a bigger than a car.
Now this is when computers had air conditioning units bigger than a car to cool them down.
Oh my God. Oh man.
I mean, seriously, whole floor,
Yeah.
You needed a huge room, and then they had raised floors because all the wires were under the floor.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting time, but it was state of the art for back then.
Okay. What with you being down there, where did you do computer program? Did you go to Alabama, over to Alabama where NASA and everything was started?
No, I did. There was a small burgeoning computer programming department at Grambling.
Okay.
And it was also in the business school because of data processing. And so I did that there. And I also, because I was in mathematics, I was able to study at Brookhaven National Laboratories and Argonne National Laboratories.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll go backwards a little bit. Your brothers and sisters, were they into education, or
Oh
did
yeah,
they
all of
go?
us graduated from college.
Okay.
Yeah, one brother in political science, my sister in physics, and two brothers in chemistry.
Wow. Wow. Okay. There's a smart family.
No, we were the slow ones
Oh my
in that
God.
town.
Oh my God. That's kind of like, I am 6'7", and everybody in my family is huge. So the run of our family is 6'1", and I love
Right,
telling
yeah,
people,
kind of
yeah,
like that.
the little guy is 6'1". He's barely a man. I mean,
Is
he's
he the
nothing.
oldest?
No, he's the youngest.
Oh, darn, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's whenever I was growing up, my dad is 6'4", and he's a big truck driver. And he
Right.
was like, "You'll never be bigger than me. You'll never be bigger. You may be bigger than me, but I can still whoop you." I was like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." Okay, so they're all also in postgrad. They're in great careers.
Right. Yeah, they
Okay,
did very well. Yeah, my parents prepared us well.
so you got into computer programming, and did you just do that for a bunch of years, or when
Yeah,
did
I did
kind
it
of?
for about I did it for more than 20 years actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you
And
got to see
so
a lot
yeah.
of progress in computers in that time.
Yeah, I saw it go from the big mainframes down to the microcomputers.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
just as I was leaving, microcomputers were taking over the offices.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm thinking of anything in old films where it's the reel to reel and
right. Uh-huh.
the punch cards too.
Right. Now, all that's where I started.
Oh my God. Oh man. And
But that was really a step up because the generation before that they were actually using wired boards and changing the wiring on boards.
oh my God. Well, I was just thinking I bet there is not much. I bet a lot of that stuff just got scrapped. And
Most of it did.
it's
Yeah.
kind of a shame that it's not still out there somewhere.
Yeah, most of it did get scrapped.
Oh man. Okay. So you did programming for a bunch of years. What led you to printing or back to printing?
Well, I've always been interested in books,
Okay.
And so when I was when I was employed at IBM, I took a what was it? I took a calligraphy class. The United States Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C. had a complete uh, program, a complete, almost like a college program
Okay.
for training. You could take anything there,
Huh.
anything, statistics, chemistry, anything. And they offered a calligraphy class on a Saturday morning. And I
Mhm.
took that because I was interested in it. And I I loved it. So I practiced calligraphy for about 6 years, I think.
Okay.
But I did not pursue it professionally. I did try, but it was unsuccessful because it took too much work. And then it kind of lay dormant.
Okay.
And I took my sons to Williamsburg and saw the printing press there. And I said, I was fascinated by it. And I said I would try it. And I went back to Chicago and I went to a place called Artist Bookworks, which was a community-based book art center. And I learned letterpress printing, and it was just something that I connected with. And the next thing you know, I had a printing press in the basement and a little shop, and I was printing every night when I got home from work.
Was most of the work you're doing, was it commercial work or was it more
No, it was just
artistic work?
work for me. I was a hobby printer,
Okay.
which I guess you could say I am now, a hobby printer. I'm not losing enough money to be a full-fledged printer. I'm not making enough money to be a business.
So you get into letterpress. I know there was a time. So we had Kevin and Julie here from Yeehaw Letterpress. Had you ever
Right.
you ever
Mm.
So I would hear Kevin and Julie tell stories about traveling, especially around the South, to just try and salvage old type. So did you do a lot of that in your downtime?
I did a little bit of that, and they also did it on a motorcycle too. I hear.
Oh yeah. I have to ask Julie about that.
Yeah,
I didn't know about that part.
I think they had a motor. They did a motorcycle trip one time.
Oh my God.
That's what somebody told me about them. I did that after I got into letterpress printing. I did because I think that at the time you felt that, oh yeah, I have to save everything that I can save because it was being thrown away.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a little bit, and then I did it, and then I kind of stopped, and then I picked it back up in the 2000s,
Okay.
and I started collecting more stuff, and I've stopped because I've come to the realization that I am a hoarder, and I need to stop that stuff. Let somebody else collect it. Let the young people collect it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a group here called Stripe Light. There's Sarah Shabaro and Brian Baker,
Oh.
and they would still scrounge, and he
Right.
found a crazy amount of the massive wood.
Right, wood type.
type.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And he was like, I went into the shop one day and he's like, you got to come in here and start playing with this. It's a lot of fun. I was like, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, wood type is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy wood type more than metal type because it's big and it's easier. I find it's easier for me to work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julie did a piece here in the last few years that was amazing for the Dogwood. We have a arts group here called Dogwood Arts.
Okay.
And she did this big, beautiful piece, and it was wood. And I watched her print it, and I was like, it was insanely big. It was big.
Yeah, I understand she has a massive collection of wood type.
Yeah. Yeah. She, I think she downsized here recently a little bit. But yeah, she's awesome. She's the nicest person in the world.
Right.
I love her to death. So you started doing it kind of on the side, and it then became your full-time gig, kind of.
I guess you could say that. I never really made any money at it.
Yeah.
And before I could actually get started, I went back to graduate school
Okay.
at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Okay.
And I earned an MFA in graphic design. And then I went off to teach for 3.5 years.
Okay.
And then I left there and I went to Alabama. And that's where I actually started printing on a regular basis.
Okay.
And printing every day too.
Which part of Alabama?
I had started in a small town called York, Alabama, about 20 miles northeast of Meridian, Mississippi.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a very silly thing, but you also weren't far from Arkansas. For the 5th anniversary of my business, I drove from Knoxville to Chattanooga to Memphis, and I had never been across the top of those 3 states. Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Mississippi.
Right.
And it was a gorgeous drive to take.
Right.
And it was.
So you almost followed the Tennessee River.
Yeah. And then the silly part is I'm a donut person, and my favorite donut shop in the world is in West Memphis, Arkansas. So I literally drove to Memphis to get donuts.
To get that donut
for my 5th anniversary, and I sat there and I just ate them. I was like, "They're as good as I remember." Oh my God! Stop eating them! Stop eating them! Okay, so you're in Alabama. Was there any point where you started like teaching letterpress or talking to kids about letterpress?
Well, actually, I did when I was in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
I did. I spent 3 summers at the Racine Museum of Art in Racine, Wisconsin, the Worcester Museum in Racine, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And they had a program called VIP. I can't recall what it stood for. And they would bring in, it was a 2-week program. The first week they would bring in a writer or a poet. Okay. And the students would write something very short that was under the direction of the instructor. And the second week I would come in and we would make something, we would make paper. They would print an image. I would go home at night and set all the type and then bring it back, and then they would print the pages and they would make a book. So for 3 years I made books with children ranging from the age of, I think, about 8 to 13.
Oh man. 8 to 13. Wow. Yeah.
Right.
I got lucky enough to where I actually got to I've been doing graphic design for 30 years, like as
Okay.
of last year. And I taught kids in middle school and high school how to do graphic design, but I did it all by hand, no
Right.
computer. You had to, and I taught them history of type, history of everything to where they could apply. And then I had professionals come in on the last day and review their portfolio, all the
Excellent.
work. It was so much fun. Okay, so you're doing that and you're in Alabama. Are there any artists or letterpress people that you admired or talked to kind of further your art?
Yes, the first person that I came in contact with that I greatly admired was Julie Holcomb.
Okay.
And she's a letterpress printer. She retired this year. As a matter of fact, she's just calling me now.
Oh my God.
Hold on just a minute.
Okay.
Hello, Julie. I am on a Zoom meeting, and I just mentioned you. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, I'll give you a call back as soon as I get off. Okay, bye. That was her.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh my God. If I can I leave that in? Because that's too perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so Julie Holcomb was one.
Julie Holcomb out in 9. She was out in San Francisco and the
Okay.
Bay Area. Walter Hamady was one of my professors at University of Wisconsin-Madison. Jim Sheridan and Hat Showprint.
Oh yeah.
And then there was just a bunch of old printers around Chicago that I hung out with.
Okay.
That I admired. Yeah.
So did you see a change in like letterpress going from kind of a technical vocational thing to more of an artistic driven thing?
I was on well, it's really interesting because one of the things that happened is that there was this push for letterpress printing in an academic setting
Okay.
because it was an inexpensive way for a poet to get their work printed.
Okay.
When you're 20 years old and somebody says you can make a book, all it takes is your time to set type and to print it. You're like, hey, I got more time than money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was this really growth in the 80s, or interest in the 80s in letterpress printing as an alternative to trying to get your books published in a vanity press or something of that nature.
Okay.
And so that fostered and developed the first generation of new practitioners of letterpress printing in academia. And you'll see that people from Wisconsin went off to teach in the University of Arizona, University of Alabama, other places that have strong printing, letterpress printing, book arts, basically book arts. And so that was the first wave. And then Julie Holcomb came about, and there was a second wave that started in the late 80s, early 90s, where letterpress printing really took off for stationery, business cards, wedding invitations, those sort of things, where lawyers were ordering, cards that were printed via letterpress.
Right.
And that was not an inexpensive thing to do.
Yeah.
But that was very, very popular. And then the next thing that happened was the rise in wedding invitations and greeting cards by very small independent shops. Normally people who had been introduced to letterpress printing at the university. And then once they graduated, decided that they were going to start a little shop in their basement, because at the time, equipment was fairly still inexpensive. So for the same price of getting a Macintosh, you could get a press and some type. But one of the things that happened in the 90s is that photopolymers took off.
Okay.
And that became a more convenient way to produce images that you could print via letterpress. And also you could use things directly from the computer and have, so you could go in on a Mac with, not Illustrator or something like that, and create the document, have photopolymer plates made from it and print it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, suddenly you had this vast library of different typefaces that you could use. That was difficult as letterpress printing started to decline commercially, because the foundries were one of the first things to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, because I came up in printing. I remember there was like 20, 25 print shops at one time here in town, and I bet there are maybe 4 left.
Right.
And it's crazy. It's crazy to picture that.
Right. But then someone can go online and get their business cards printed. They don't know where, but it'd be at their door the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I am bad. I'm guilty of that.
So one of the things that people don't realize is that there were printers who specialized especially in very large cities, who specialized in just printing prayer cards.
Oh, yeah.
For the Catholic Church and funerals.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a shop here that just did business cards. I think they were called Business Cards Express.
Right.
Yeah. And they did a crazy amount of business. Okay, so when you how do you feel about that shift from it seeming to be a little bit more technical or vocational to art-based work?
Well, see, art is extremely technical, and you cannot remove the technical expertise you need to be a letterpress printer simply by putting it in the art department.
Okay.
They still have to have that technical expertise.
Yeah.
Because that is just the nature of the beast.
Okay.
I think that as long as it stays alive, it doesn't make me a difference where it stays alive.
And with your parents being in education and your family being very heavily educated, how do you feel about like the trades waning in schools, like high schools?
Well, I really regret that as I get older, because now I'm to the point where I think that high school should be a 6-year process with 2 of the years devoted to what they call vocational trades. Yeah. Everybody should learn some vocational trades. I really believe that working with your hand and physically doing work gives you another relationship to the world, gives you another way of learning. And when it's all cerebral, when it's all on a screen, I believe that there are talents in you that are not fully developed.
Yeah.
That if you were working with your hands, you would begin to understand things. Also, I think that the idea of doing something repetitively teaches you a lot.
Yeah.
It's nice to discover something new, but it's also nice to have to fold 2,000 cards.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've done that. What's it called? A whalebone to do the scoring. And my God. I have done my arthritis. I've done enough of that in my lifetime. Has politics always been present in your work?
Politics has always been present in all of our lives, so you cannot avoid it. Right. You can ignore it. you can ignore politics, but politics doesn't ignore you.
Yeah.
You know, someone said something like that. I'm paraphrasing someone, but I like to say good ideas are not singular. They
Yeah.
travel around the world.
Yeah.
So so I recognize the importance of politics in shaping my life, and I want to shape politics since it's shaping me.
Yeah. I got very lucky, and when I was in the 7th grade, there was a plot of land next to my parents' house, and somebody had tried to buy it and develop it into a crazy amount of apartments. Like let's say
Okay.
2,500 apartments in like less than 8 acres.
Ah,
And it was all going to dump out right in front of our house, and the traffic flow. And so my dad, big tough truck driving dude, got pissed, and so he got involved in his community, and he's been president of his neighborhood organization since I was in the 7th grade, and he used to make me write his speeches for him. He's like, "Boy, you're taking English. You figure out how to say this." I was like, "Yes, sir." So I was an 11-year-old writing my dad's speeches before city council, and but he was big on me. He was like, "You got to get involved." He was like, "You can't sit back. You got to vote every time. You got to meet the people. You got to figure this out."
Right. And the thing is that we now live in a society where people would rather get out and protest
Mhm.
something that has happened than go to the meetings and stop it from happening.
Right. Right.
Right now they want to put another dump in my neighborhood. They just got rid of a dump. And there was a meeting, and there must be close to 500 people in the neighborhood. Only 30 people showed up. That's a good showing.
Yeah.
But now when they build the dump, all 500 of them going to be out there. And it's going to
Yeah.
be, where were you when we could have stopped it? Because
Yeah.
it's easier to stop it before it's built than after it's built.
Yeah. We here, the city has been putting in a lot of speed bumps just on roads, these
Right.
big heavy duty speed bumps. And I've seen people complain about them. I was like, no, you're in that neighborhood, and one person probably complained about speed, and it got done.
Right.
Because you weren't there.
Right.
If you opposed it, you got to show up.
Well, see, I'm in favor of as you may well be aware, when you come to a crossing, there's a cutout for people who are in wheelchairs,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you go across the street, and then there's a crossing to go up to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
in favor of continuing the height of the sidewalk across the street.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that creates a small speed bump. So everybody has to slow down at every crossing.
Yeah.
And also, why should a person in a wheelchair have to negotiate going down and coming back up
Yeah.
when they can just go straight across?
Yeah.
And that's for that same, why should I have to go down, step down and then get at the street level and then step back up to the sidewalk level? The sidewalk should have dominance over the road.
Yeah.
Especially in neighborhoods where, in heavily resident areas.
I think we've struggled with here. It's like, well, it feels like the city, or we've not complained to the city. It's like, well, we built you sidewalks in 1965, so you're good. It's like,
You're
no, you got to maintain them, man. This is crazy. Where tree stumps and stuff have just completely destroyed. You mentioned books. Have you created your own book?
I used to do books, but
Okay.
When I moved to Alabama, I had to give up that pursuit because the artist books, which are sold primarily to collectors and libraries, are very difficult to sell. And they take a considerable amount of time to produce and a lot of money.
Yeah.
So by the time you produce it, you have to have some other source of income while you're making that book. And that's one reason why it may take a book artist maybe 2 years to make a book, because they work in another job and they work in this in the in-between time, when they can find the time, when they have the funds, and then they can put this book together. but there are a few people who make their living, and that's just because this is the way our civilization acts, 40 hours a week being only a book artist. Very
Yeah.
few. A lot of them teach, teach at a university, or they teach at one of the book art centers, and they may have they may have a job in the arts, and say as an art handler at the museum, or
Yeah.
they may be selling books at a bookstore
Yeah.
and then making books and when they have that time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and when I moved to Alabama, I did not have the luxury of that time. So I switched to printing posters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to see more of in art or letterpress or creativity?
I would like to see more art taught in K through 12.
Okay.
Right. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see when I was in Gordo, Alabama, there was a principal of the elementary school, and I cannot remember her name, but she made the decision to incorporate art into every class.
Hmm.
So you didn't have an
That's
art class. You had an art class. You had an
yeah.
art room,
Yeah.
but you learned about art in the English class. You learned about art in the history class. You learned about art in the science class. You
Man,
learned about art in the math class.
that's amazing.
Yes. And I think that of all the disciplines that are taught, in the academic or in the school setting, educational setting,
Mhm.
art is the only one that there is no one correct answer to the
Mhm.
project. There's many answers as there are people in the class.
Yeah.
And that gives you a freedom that I don't think you can see anyplace else, because 2 plus 2 is always 4.
Yeah.
But how you combine 3 colors on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper will be different for as many people as there are in the class.
Yeah. Wow. Is there anyone you would like to work with?
I like to work with kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Kids are so cool. Just this last week? No, 2 weekends ago. I was out in Bainbridge Island at Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, and they were doing a series of programs to celebrate the life of Martin Luther King. And on Saturday, they brought in groups of children, and they brought in one group of teachers and librarians. And I
Mhm.
worked with them to print. And the last group that came in, it was very unusual because there were 7 boys in the group and no girls,
Huh.
which that is the first time I've ever been in a group with more boys than girls.
Yeah.
Later on, 2 girls came in, but for the first 15, 20 minutes, it was just these 7 boys,
Huh.
ranging in age from 8 to about 13. And there were no shenanigans. They were just hard at work printing, making these little prints.
That's awesome.
They were loving it. They were doing multiple colors. They were just all over the place. And then, some of them embellished them with colors and writing after they printed because they wanted certain information on it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is weird like nowadays getting kids off of screens, which I
It,
know is a rote thing to say, but
but there's something about letterpress printing
yeah.
that they start with a blank sheet of paper and they ink up the form and then they run it through, and then suddenly here's this thing that I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is, I mean, kids' eyes light up.
Yeah. Oh, man. Now you're getting me pumped up. Do you set goals or a checklist of anything you would like to do?
No, I just kind of get up in the morning. Only thing I want to do is be able to get up in the morning with at least as much sense as I had the day before. I know I'm losing it. As I
Oh
get
my
older, I
God.
know I'm losing it, but I want to be kind of coherent
Yeah.
and with good health too.
Yeah.
After you reach a certain age, you realize that good health both physical and mental, is far more important than anything else in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. As someone who played a lot of sports, I've been working really hard at not letting everything just deteriorate. Because
Right.
I can hear my knees pop and my elbows pop and everything. I was like, I got to keep it up and moving, or it's
Right.
just going to fall apart fast. Is there any museum or magazine or anywhere you would like to see your work published or shown?
No, well, I consider that I am past that,
Okay.
and that now it's time for young people to take the field. I'm 72 years old. I cannot, I had my 15 minutes of fame. Not that is not to say that things will not come,
Yes, sir.
but I am not actively attempting to get something that would deprive a younger person who actually needs that
Okay.
to, so it's like I do not try to have work in museums.
Okay.
I would prefer to have my work in a public library
Okay.
because more people will see it in a public library than in a museum.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just the way I feel because the public library is the last commons that we have in the United States. You don't have to. In order to use the public library, all you have to do is show up.
Yeah.
You don't pay a fee to get in. Nobody asks you to see an ID to get in. You just show up and you use whatever you want to use.
Yeah. And the world's at your fingertips because they have all the books. They have all the knowledge.
Right. And that's the last place in America that's like that.
Yeah. Oh,
for example, there are museums here in Detroit. And because I live in Detroit, I can go to it free. But if you come to Detroit, you have to pay.
I can and I did. I went to one of the museums when I was in Detroit, and yeah, I had to pay.
Right. But both of us can walk into the public library across the street from it.
Yeah. Detroit is an interesting town. I got told by a guy, what was it? When I was coming back in from Canada, he said, stay in the shadows of the buildings. And I looked at him, I was like, was that some Jason Bourne stuff? Did you just activate me? Like, what is happening? And he was like, no, I just stay within the I was like, I had no problems when I was in Detroit. I don't know what that guy was talking about. It was a lot of fun.
Well, people have a misconception about Detroit.
Yeah.
And I've been here for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Detroit is a poor city, generally speaking. But when I first got here, one thing that I did not see in Detroit was people living on the streets, people that didn't have houses living on the streets. And because it was so poor that we couldn't afford that, to have people unsheltered, you have to be a wealthy city.
Okay.
A poor city can't do that.
Okay.
Because everybody was related to somebody, and it's hard for you to put your blood into a cold Detroit winter.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So we just didn't have that. It wasn't until maybe right before the pandemic that I saw people living under the overpasses, and that was just one instance that I saw. So it wasn't epidemic as it is in some cities.
It's pretty bad down here, but then you hear all the scuttlebutt of people saying like, well, people ship them in from other places to here. I was like, who is the person? What are you talking about, man?
But didn't Tennessee make it a felony to be unhoused?
Oh God, I'm sure. Bill Lee I feel like my entire time on Twitter is just going hard in the paint against Tim Burchett, Bill Lee, and I don't know if you follow wrestling, but our county mayor is Kane the wrestler. And that is the appropriate response because it is awful.
But Jesse Ventura was the governor of
Minnesota. That's true.
So
but we laughed. It was really funny because Kane wore a mask And during the whole pandemic, he was so anti-mask. It's like, wait, no, you wore a mask. Like,
Right.
you can't do this, man. Okay. Final big question. If you could talk to the 14-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell them?
Don't grow up.
Stay young.
Yeah, stay young. Well, if I could talk to a 14-year-old version of myself, I would tell them that, you know, that you've been fed a pack of lies,
Mhm.
and that things are not going to work. Things do not work the way that they tell you it does.
Okay.
That it is all rigged. Certain people will win and certain people will lose, and they've chosen those. No
Yeah.
matter how hard you work, it is very unlikely that you become a winner.
Okay.
And that just give up all that stuff. It's best to live a life that you are comfortable and that you have no stress.
Yeah.
And and pursuing dreams of wealth and importance, fame, it is not worth it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's kind of a dour thing to think of, but it's well, there's somebody I know that he said most people are average. Be okay with being average.
Right.
And I think that's a great way of looking at it. He was, what was it he said? He's like, you're not going to be Jay-Z. There's 10 guys around Jay-Z who aren't Jay-Z. I was like,
Right.
you're exactly right.
But that's the thing, is that this goes back to the way that we all have a gift.
Yeah.
And the civilization that we live in should allow us to cultivate that gift to the maximum, because it will allow the civilization to be at its maximum.
Mm-hmm.
And in cultivating and living and working with the gift you have, you live a peaceful life. When I say peaceful, I mean a life in balance with the surroundings. And that's what you want to do. You want to, people ask me, what do you do? I say, as little as possible. And they get, oh, you're being sadistic. No. Why should you do more than you absolutely have to do?
Yeah. Oh,
That's
man.
all you should do.
Okay. I think that's a good moment to go out on.
Okay.
Thank you for being on.
Okay. Thank you very much.